All right, evening everyone. You can see that message popping up there. So I'm getting ready to start a race, and it's warning me that based on the weight I put in and my FTP, I'm running the risk of getting flagged for being a sandbagger. I think I'm on the edge of it, but I actually haven't run into that yet. So we're going to leave as is. Let me get you weather while we're waiting for that to load up here. So I did put in my weight from this morning of 157.9. I'm going to go ahead and click I understand. Let me get my bike set up real quick here. You can see I already set up my weight. Same course, same crit course, so we're sticking with the Specialized Venge with the 808 wheels. It's going to be 6 quick laps clockwise again. I think a little bit smaller of a field this time. So we'll have to see. I think my experience is, 29. My experience is that when the field is smaller, tend to ride a little bit slower, because there aren't as many people willing to do the work to hammer the front. Let's go ahead and get the camera angle changed here. First person view. Grab another drink. So I did my warm up already with no fans. I didn't get you a temperature. It is cold. These fans on. Freezing right now. It says 59, feels like 58 because we have 58% humidity. Well, let me get my sheets tightened real quick. All right, it's about game time. Another 7th place, 2.3 seconds off the front. Looks like I actually had quite a bit of my power up left, which means I could have burned it earlier. Forgot that that drafting one burns longer. All right, let me grab a picture of this. Save that away. Go screen and go back for a second, and I'll jump right back in here. My lungs are on fire right now. I did my warm up on the Champs-Élysées, so we'll go ahead and do the cool down the same. All right, get out of that tall gear. Whew. All right, well, so much for smaller field, slower race. I'm gonna jump off real quick and fix some of these fans before my legs freeze to death. Plus, this way you can actually hear me better. I don't have to yell. All right. So we're back on the Champs-Élysées. You didn't see my warm-up, but this is where I was. Wow. Might do me some good to clean my drivetrain. All right. I'm gonna go ahead and jump over to Garmin because my last ride already posted over there. So we were definitely going faster. Average speed of 26.2, max speed 34.7. I think those races have been averaging in the 25 and a half. So average heart rate was 168 with a max of 176. So doing pretty good. I was trying really hard to keep it down in the 160s. But man, they just kept coming fast and hard. And my heart rate would just start getting closer and closer to red line every time you hit one of those hills. So everyone in that front group could climb pretty well. It really wasn't, we didn't break anyone apart. They were kind of spread out a little bit, and then we would all group back together. So everyone could climb pretty good, or pretty equally, and then those that maybe couldn't climb as well did a good job of jumping back on pretty quick. Let me jump over to the activity within Zwift itself, because it'll show all the other riders. So like I said, I finished 7th out of, man, must be getting old, out of 37. And H. Wright, I saw him dropping off on the top of that last lap. So he finished a couple seconds behind me. So top 16 were probably the original front group, because there's definitely there's about 1:26 separating 16th from 17th. And 16th was only 14 seconds off the front. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 people. So 9th through 16th was probably the splinter, the second group that splintered off the front of the first group. Sorry, splintered off the back of the front group. And then 1st through 8th was everyone that was able to hang in that front group. So it's interesting because you can see everyone's stats. Right, so it shows average heart rate, the time gaps, average power in watts and in watts per kilogram. So watts per kilogram being a more accurate equalizing number. Watts alone, you can be putting a lot of watts, and I've talked about this before, but on the same amount of terrain, it takes more, like if you're climbing at all, for example, a heavier person is going to need more watts to ride the same amount of speed as a lighter person. And downhill, opposite of that, although not to the same extreme. And then flats, it's less about weight and more about aerodynamics. Once you get the all that weight up to speed. Was it whatever law of thermodynamics that is? A body in motion wants to stay in motion. So the only thing you're overcoming that wants to counteract that is drag. And that can be drag of your tires against the road surface. It can be drag within your drivetrain, but the biggest one is drag of a wind coefficient. Coefficient of drag of wind against your body. So there, it's really more around your size this way rather than weight. Anyway. The reason I brought that up is second place was wearing a heart rate monitor. 6th place I was in 7th place And that was it for the top 8. No one else is wearing a heart rate monitor. I averaged 3.36 watts per kilogram. First place averaged 3.06 watts per kilogram. D. Romeo. Oh, wow. That was the guy who was behind me on at the top of the climb. I thought he was gone. So he must have come around everyone and had an awesome sprint. And again, this is average for the whole time. So if you do a good job of staying out of the wind, then you're not putting in as many watts. So your average watts is down. Your average watts per kilogram is down. But you can still place higher. Second, third, fourth, fifth, all were within 0.09 watts per kilogram of each other. And 10th place, which was 12 seconds behind me, no, 10 seconds behind me, put in the second highest watts per kilogram, all the way in the top 15. So, it's how much, what's the average watts you're doing? So, was he spending more time in the wind, doing a bunch of work, and then he popped and went up the back. It's too bad it shows your actual picture you have loaded, so it doesn't show your avatar, which, just like in real life, when you're riding a bike, I've ridden with guys lots and lots, and first time I read them, and this is ridden with them in real life, first time I meet them in real life, not on a bike, I don't even recognize them, because you get used to picking out people based on their helmet and maybe shoes and their bike and distinguishing factors, not necessarily their jersey, because it probably changes all the time, but anyway, all that to say, it's similar. It'd be easier to pick out who these guys were if I could look at what their avatar was when they were riding at the time. So, I mentioned this before. Every race is a good race. It's all a learning experience. We were obviously going a lot faster, as evidenced by the average speed, but my heart rate was not sitting there redline the whole time. I definitely didn't feel like I had a lot to give, but was able to stay with the front till the finish, or up through the finish, I should say. But obviously I had nothing left in me for a sprint, and that's what it became pretty obvious early on. But that's how that was going to finish. Because if we weren't, looking at the finish stats, we did wind up splintering the pack, but otherwise, we weren't really shrinking the pack. And maybe that would have changed if this were one of those 15 lap races on that course. Going that long, that hard, I would have expected some people, again, it's just as much of a mental game as anything else. So pushing that hard for that many laps, could you have convinced someone in their mind that let me use this little hill to stretch out my legs a little bit. Could we have convinced some people in their mind that their body couldn't do anymore? Right, and then mentally they give up. But with 6 laps, that was not the case. So I will tell you kind of some of the stuff going through my head during that race, because that lap, well, we finished 2 laps, so we were halfway through lap 3, went through the climb, and just like every lap, we stretched out on the climb, put in just as much of a dig, if not more, after the climb to try and get back together. I could start to see it spreading out, and I immediately was thinking, what happened last time? Right, you gave up here, thinking you were going to leave something on the table, and I knew I couldn't afford that. So I'd rather blow up with nothing left, with an attempt to try and stay with the race, than thinking somehow I was going to catch back on, but I had something left, right? So, that's not going to happen. So with that, did put in some pretty good efforts to do some bridging some gaps across the top there a couple times, a couple laps, maybe halfway through lap 3 and halfway through lap 4. 5 and 6 not so much, because at that point I was already in the mindset that this is the end game, and so then it wasn't really a question. It wasn't a do I or don't I. Again, thinking back to our conversation in the last race, you either do it now or you quit. So lap 5 and 6 wasn't a question. The earlier laps, there was a contemplation immediately followed by a, why are you even thinking about this?
Assuming we make it, I think we will. This is my 9th summit of Chile, and knock on wood, I don't want to jinx us, but I've always had
So anyway,
summit days.
that was all good.
Never had major storms or anything.
If you were paying attention at the beginning,
If I was up here a couple days ago, I was a bit worried because the day
so my heart rate got up to
was really stormy.
mid 140s during my the ramp up phase of my warm up.
Up on the summit,
I think, again, it was so cold that without any fans, I still was struggling a little bit to get enough sweat going that my heart rate monitor would pick up my heart rate. I tend to be a bit of a hairy guy, so until I start working up a good sweat, I don't always get a good accurate reading. So I think it probably got in the mid 140s from what I could tell, playing around with it a little bit. And then the next half of my warm up is like 65% of FTP sustaining, and there I kept it about mid 130s. But what happened is, and I've been doing about like that, I thought about maybe I should take that a little bit higher, or keep the higher FTP or higher wattage longer, before dropping down, something like that, because I want to make sure my heart rate's up there. I jump over to the race with about 5 minutes to go, because that gives me enough time to set my weight, quit the game, launch the game, come back into the game, get all set up, launch the stream, change my gear, my bike and my wheels and everything, and get all ready. Talk to you for a little bit before the race starts. And but during that 5 minutes, I have to be cautious not to let my heart rate come down, because it's already not really high. And this time I put the fans on, and I'm glad I did, because I definitely sweat up a storm during that race. But man, when I started out, I was cold, and I've ridden in some pretty cold stuff. Raced in the snow before. That wasn't fun, but it was definitely cold. And right out of the gate, it was a fast start, and I don't think it's been starting out quite that quick, and or I've been being patient enough to let other people do some work. Well, we were pretty strung out before we ever made the left turn onto the race course out of the racing starting pens. So you can start to see the front of the race forming, and I wasn't where I needed to be. So if you go back to the beginning of this, you can see it. I wound up bridging a gap. I think I brought a bunch of people with me. So I don't really care so much about whether I brought people with me or not. And I suppose you could argue if I hadn't, then maybe when I jumped over, I think that front group had like 4 or 5 in it. Maybe that would have been the only group rather than bringing everyone with me. But anyway, I did a bunch of work to catch that front group, and I didn't even want to, but it was one of those things where you either work right now, or the race has already been decided and you're not it. So it reminds me a lot. If you've ever watched a rowing event, so we're talking sculls is what it's called, or something else. Maybe that's the small one and the big one's a crew boat. Anyway, the long, slender boats where you'll either row, I think it's 4 or 8 every other side, or you can ride 2 or 4, row 2 or 4, where each person has both oars, left and right. Anyway, when those, I should know all this, I actually did it in college, but in a 2,000 meter race on an 8-person boat, so every other person has one side, so 4 oars on each side, so 8-person boat, plus the coxswain, who's the person doing the steering and coaching, with the quarterback. He's in the boat, he or she is in the boat, but not doing any work. 2,000 meter race, the first 500 meters is all out. You have to get the boat up to speed, and it kind of sets the pace for the rest of the race. So it reminds me very much of that, the way this race started.
Getting limber, getting ready.
And
Heart rate too.
just to let you know how the rest of that 2,000 meters works,
Then we'll get into
the middle 1,000 meter
and
is more sustaining,
we can expect
keep the pressure on,
a little bit different today.
maybe make a little bit of a move here or there, but it's not really where the move is made. It's more of a, you know, maybe apply a little bit more pressure than the other boats and see who can take the pain. But it's not a sprint by any means. And then the last 500 meters is the sprint. So it's, you know, get your boat up to speed, keep it at speed, and then kick it up again to the finish. I won't say that's how this race was, because that middle 1,000 meters definitely was not this. It was, or maybe it was. It was just really elevated. Anyway. All right, I think I'll just bring this to 6 miles here. Call it good. Again, my goal during a cool down, just keep the muscles moving, flush them out a little bit, get the heart rate down, bring the breathing down. I think I've accomplished all that here. So we'll take it to the 6 mile mark.
We've only got quote unquote
And call it good.
that 700 feet of vertical gain to go to get to the summit. But when you're up at this altitude, that's a lot of terrain to cover. We're gonna get there. And we've got
There we go.
to help distract our mind from the challenge of intervals.
All right, guys, with that, I will leave you.
All right, you're doing
If you like this video, hit that thumbs up.
stay strong with me.
If you want to stay notified,
To go.
hit that subscribe button. I tend to do most, if not all, my videos live. So if you want to be notified when I go live, the subscribe button will tell you.
We're going to get a good recovery.
Um,
2, 1, and
you know, hopefully you like these videos. It's the same course over and over.
4, 5.
I'd like to get it dialed in. I don't know. I was just thinking maybe I try a level B at one of these times, but
Nice job on that push.
I don't know. Might just be asking for trouble. Maybe I'll look for a race that is not on the crit course. How about that? See what I can find. They're not as frequent, so I have to find one that fits into my time schedule. And because I have to race on the time schedule of the race,
All right, get
it's always kind of up in the air.
we're almost to our next
All right, with that,
3, 2, 1, and
I'll leave in the comments all my Garmin data. I'll leave a link to the hydration product I use called H2O, and I will leave a link to the maps of the Zwift worlds.
flats before.
If there's something you want me to ride, even if I've ridden it before, leave me a comment. Or if you want me to ride it in a different direction, leave me a comment. Or if we're going to just go for a ride. I have several people now inviting me to group rides. Unfortunately, they're on the other side of the world, so they're like at 10:30 my time, 10:30 p.m. So haven't done some of those yet, but again, keep them coming, and I'll do my best to get those scheduled up. All right, with that, guys, I will see you in the virtual world. Thumbs up, and